Welcome back to Rüniverse. I'm Andrew, and in this video, I'm going to be going over Saff in the 6th of the 8 episodes of the Prism series for the Rüniverse trading card game. So we're going to be looking at Saff, which is the blue facet, and going in depth through all of the cards in the base set. So here we've got 3 mages that I've chosen as representatives of Sapp for the purpose of this video, which actually I said base set, but the mages are from the core set, so subtle distinction there. But Zuli, Drogo, and Atlantis. We have a draw gift, a dispel gift, and a Saff gift. We have a knowledge focus mage, a sea life focus mage, and a water focus mage. And those are the 3 focus traits of Saff. And as I've done previously in the series, I've divided the cards up between those 3 focus traits, even when they don't necessarily perfectly fit. But the way I've divided these 3 keywords is that knowledge is going to be about drawing cards, so that's something that Saff likes to do. Sea life is just going to be like creatures, like generic creatures. We saw a lot of that in Emery. We saw some of that in Trine in the previous episode. So it's going to be just mostly like creatures doing creaturey things. You've got to have a way to win, right? And then we have water, which is going to represent control-focused themes. So Saff is one of the 2 most controlling colors alongside Orth, the yellow facet. So water is going to be our representative for that category here. So let's put these all away and then get started with knowledge. First up, we have the Egg of Sagacious Bubbles. So it's a quick little level 0, so we got an egg with fancy titles in each of the 8 facets. And here is the Saff one. It has the lore ability, when I'm evoked, draw cards. So just a simple, it's a good guard. You're not losing a card by throwing it under the bus in front of your opponent. In that sense, it's somewhat of a controlling card as well, but just the ability to draw a card. I mean, drawing a card is kind of a controlling strategy, so you see a lot of crossover for that, but we're focused on the drawing part of things, so lore, draw a card, pretty straightforward. Next up is the big brother of the Sagacious Bubbles egg, is the Existentialite. It has the Marrow ability. My level is the number of cards in your hand, so it costs 3 to evoke, and it would normally be a level 3, but while it's in play, its Marrow ability is going to take over and change its level to be whatever number of cards you have in your hand. So if you've got 4 cards, it's going to be a level 4. If you've got 0 cards, it's going to be a level 0. Fortunately, in Rüniverse, that does not mean the creature would die. It'll just sit there as a level 0, but you probably do want to get some more cards in your hand and turn the Existentialite into an attacker worthy of the armor depicted in this artwork. Next up, we have Fishmote, which is interesting because it actually is the sea life focus trait common for Saff here. So it has the sea life lore similar to Egg of Sagacious Bubbles, but instead of drawing a card, automatically you need to have been evoked by a sea life mage in order to get that card. But because it is a draw card effect, I put it into this category. Could also be in the sea life category. It's just a creature doing its thing, but it is a level 3, so it can attack and block. Unlike the Egg of Sagacious Bubbles, it doesn't always draw a card. So it's a little bit more into the creaturey category, but still a draw card ability, so I put it here. Next up, we have the Oddball Rare, the Relic Heart of the Ocean. The Mysteries ability says that after you draw a card from another non-gift ability or effect, put a level +1 counter on one of your mage's creatures, and after another non-gift effect or ability puts a level +1 counter on one of my mage's creatures, draw a card. So it's, did you draw a card? Get a counter. Did you get a counter? Draw a card. It doesn't trigger on itself, so it's not an infinite loop or anything like that. And in this case, it is a little bit of a weird one because it's not actually drawing you the card. But I guess the Existentialite is not drawing you the card either. It's just rewarding you for doing so. So both of these 2 cards are just kind of rewarding the idea of drawing more cards. Unless, of course, you got a counter, in which case, there you go, get a free card. Next up, we have another egg that draws cards, the Lorehorn egg, kind of a middle brother here, but actually probably the most powerful of the 3. It's a level 3, and if you play it as a level 3, you will basically be blanking its text box. So let's take a closer look. If you play it as a ritual, so ritual means it's an ability that can appear on different types of cards, but in this case it is on a creature, and ritual is going to mean you can evoke it for 2 as a secret. Secrets are evoked for 2 as spells, and they come into play under the control of the mage that evoked them, and they just stay face down. Now if they're attacked, or if the mage that is attacked that has any secrets, the secrets are revealed, and the attacker can choose to dispel one of those instead. But traps are also evoked as secrets, so when your opponent is attacking, they don't know whether you've set a trap or whether you're setting up a ritual. But assuming you make it to the next turn with your secret still in play, you're going to be able to evoke it at a 3 power discount. and that is a fixed value of 3 as the cost reduction. So you pay 2 up front, but then it costs 3 less. And in this case, you're rewarded for doing that cost reduction effect. It takes place over a little bit of an installment plan, so you've got to be willing to wait. But if you are, the Ritual Lore 2 ability means you get to draw 2 cards if you evoked it as a ritual. So definitely, if your opponent is putting secrets out, you're going to be tempted to attack to get rid of this Lorehorn egg, but you're risking walking into a trap, which we'll see in a few minutes. Next up for knowledge is Respell, and it says return a spell from your discard to your hand and banish Respell, this card here. So one time you get to bring a spell back if you would like to reuse it, not drawing cards necessarily, but giving you that card selection for the spell that you want to use again. Then we have Slyphalopod, using knowledge perhaps in the most literal sense. The scrying ability lets you look at one of the face down bonds on your rift or an enemy mage's rift, so you know what's coming. When you break their bond, you know if it's going to be a gift, you know what's going to be going into their hand, or vice versa. You can look ahead and see if your mage is attacked and your bond is broken, what is going to be happening from that. So Slyphalopod gives you that ability, and if you are evoking it with a mage with the knowledge focus, you will get both. And finally, for knowledge, we have the Waterproof Tome, which is a uncommon relic. Costs 2, and you can task it and pay 1 power to draw a card. So pretty straightforward, just draw a card, and if your opponent wants to, they can attack the relic directly, because that's how attacking works in Rüniverse. You can attack relics directly, but they take 3 extra damage to the spell, so they would have to deal 5 damage to it. They want to break that tome and take away your ability to draw. Next up, we're moving on to water, which brings us right back to Zuli. So one of the 3 mages we looked at before, but this is Zuli with the Saff gift, which says task all cards controlled by the enemy mage with the most untasked cards. Incidentally, she is a water mage, and this is our water category here, the controlling effects, but again, that's a coincidence. The Saff gift appears on a knowledge mage as well as on a sea life mage. We just happen to be looking at Zuli, the water mage, but the Saff gift is going to slow your opponent down. So if you're able to trigger this during your own turn, you're going to be potentially taking out some blockers or some guards, but also those creatures will remain tasked throughout your opponent's next turn, and they won't be able to attack. Contrary-wise, if you task them during your opponent's turn, you could potentially turn off attackers that they had queued up, which makes this especially defensive in that way, preventing attacks from coming in. Next up, we have Hypnotoad, which has the ability Frenemy and Sway. So Frenemy is an interesting ability. It says task me to pair me with an enemy creature and task it. So this just brought up questions of what does pair mean. So in the rules, pairing doesn't really mean anything other than the 2 creatures are now paired. So there's no intrinsic effect of that other than that those creatures are now considered to be linked together, and that card effects will now be able to refer to that. Speaking of card effects, we have Sway, which says my mage controls the paired creature. So as long as this is paired with another creature, you're going to control it. If you ever were to task the Hypnotoad to use Frenemy again on a different creature, it would become paired with the new creature that you selected. But there are rules about being paired, which is that you can only be paired with one other thing. So unless a card specifically says so, as soon as Hypnotoad becomes paired with something new, the old pairing is going to dissipate, and that Sway will no longer apply to the previously paired creature because Hypnotoad will have become frenemies with something new. But this is a powerful level 3 that if you're able to activate it, you can steal something from your opponent's side. So on the turn you evoke it, your opponent is definitely going to be incentivized to attack and dispel this before you have a chance to untask and activate it. Next up is a control staple. So we have Charybdis Whirl here, a level 6 spell that says dispel all mages creatures. So in Orth we saw Cataclysm, which costs 9 and just dispels all enemy mages creatures. So this one is a little bit more symmetrical, but of course, as we know from the history of TCGs, that control decks are able to make use of this effect, which can be pretty powerful. Even if you lose your own creatures along the way, you can set up situations where you destroy all your opponent's creatures, and perhaps you've got more cards in your hand, as we've seen from Knowledge, or maybe you have more resilient creatures or various situations like that. But it's definitely in the control player's purview to set up a powerful Charybdis Whirl. Then we have Lethargize, which is a common spell. This is a trap, as we mentioned before. So again, you would pay 3 to, or rather, you'd pay 2 to evoke this as a secret, which would be face down, and then your opponent would not know when they attack that mage what their face down card is, what their secret is. Is it a trap or a ritual? If it's a ritual, they might want to be getting rid of it, as we saw with the Lornhorn egg, but they risk it being a trap, and in this case, it would trigger, and it would prevent the damage from this attack, and the attacking creatures can't untask this turn. So preventing the attack not only on that current turn, but on the next turn, potentially as well. So it's a pretty nice trap to have. Then we have Lurking Hug Seekers. This is kind of the little brother version of the Hypnotoad, which can be tasked to take control of a creature. The Hug Seeker is just seeking a hug, and it can be tasked to task an enemy creature. And again, because creatures will remain tasked throughout their opponent's next turn until the untask step at the end of the turn, that is going to be turning off potentially a guard, but also an attacker during your opponent's next turn. Then we have Mesmerize, another trap, but this one is a rare. So again, as always, secrets are evoked for 2 face down, and then traps are evoked for free when they are triggered by an attack. And this just says end the current mage's phase. So whatever your opponent's mage was in the middle of doing, so obviously they're in the middle of an attack, but if they had more attacks waiting, or maybe they were waiting to evoke afterward, that's all over with. The current mage's phase is over. As a penalty for that, because traps don't really have costs other than that they are played as secrets, we do have the downside here with the evoking mage gets 2 sap counters. So the mage that evoked this as a secret and is now evoking it for free as a trap is going to get 2 sap counters, and sap counters mean that the next time the mage makes power, they're going to make less. 2 sap counters means 2 less power. So you're basically paying later. You're going to be paying later on for that powerful effect that you got up front. Then we have Oshia Shaman. So this is a controlling card, more just in that it is defensive. So, I mean, we also saw that with the Saff gift and I suppose the Hug Seeker and so on, but this is just a taunt creature and it is defensive, meaning it takes 3 more damage to dispel it. So your opponent's going to have to hit it for 5 if they want to take her out. We also have the Little Sister Aquatic Shaman, which is a level 1 common with, again, taunt and only defensive 2. So she's going to take 3 damage to dispel, even though she's only a level 1. We have Sapphire Swords, which is a little weird one because it doesn't seem all that defensive. Your mage can task this relic and pay X power to have your mage attack for X, which is basically just direct damage. And in Saff, that most commonly is going to mean taking little potential attackers away from your opponent while you continue to set up your board. Then we have Suppressing Mist. So this is a spell that becomes attached to a mage. They discard at the end of their turn, but during their turn, all their creatures are going to have Wariness 2, meaning they get level -2. So any level 1 or 2 creature is going to be dropped down to 0 and is not going to be able to do any effective damage. Anything 3 or higher is going to have trouble making successful attacks. So the Suppressing Mist can be pretty effective at suppressing. Then here we've got Thievocation. We see Rituals again. So again, as always, Rituals are evoked as secrets for 2 power face down, and then they cost 3 less to evoke, which means that X plus 3 would be reduced down to just X. X meaning gain control of a creature with cost X or less and task it. So another way to gain control of an enemy creature is to Thievocate it. And if you're willing to just pay 3 plus the level of the creature you're choosing, feel free to pay full price, or you can maybe evoke this on turn 2, and then turn 3, you're going to have that nice cost reduction to be able to play it on the cheap. And finally, for the water category is Wavebind. An enemy creature gets level -3 until its next end of turn. So as we saw with Wariness 2, except for this is going to be a 3, dropping a potentially level 3 creature down to 0. So it's not going to be threatening you. But then if the creature is level 0 and Wavebind was attacked by a mage with a water focus, dispel that creature. So this is potentially direct removal out of Saff, which we don't normally see, but I mean, other than the Charybdis Whirl, which is the complete board wipe, but Wavebind is going to be a very situational removal. It's going to be temporary unless it's both a small enough creature and a water-focused mage. So the water category was pretty big, but now we're going to round it out with 6 Sea Life cards. So a lot of controlling elements in Saff, as you can see with the knowledge drawing cards and water controlling elements, Sea Life being just some creatures. So first up, we've got Deep Fidian, which I mentioned in the Emery video, as probably this should be an uncommon card. I don't like that Saff has a strictly better level 6 common than an Emery creature, but it is what it is, at least for now in this version of the game. And this is a level 6 common that has the ritual ability. So it doesn't have any other effects. It just has ritual, which means it can be played on that installment plan. If you're willing to play it as a secret for 2, then on turn 3 you can evoke it for just 3, and it'll be a level 6. So nice discount on a big sea creature. Next up is Paranoia. So I thought about putting this into the water category, both because, or rather because it is a controlling style card with trap and this ambush ability we'll look at in a second, but it is a fish, it is sea life, and it is a creature doing its creaturey thing. So I left it here, which is basically it's a trap. So again, playing it face down for 2, but then when that mage is attacked, it's going to be played for free, and ambush is going to come into play, which says when I'm evoked as a trap, I become the new target of the attack. So the way this works is you're going to, first of all, you could just play it as a level 3 creature, pay 3 power, you get a level 3 creature, so it doesn't do anything. It's just a level 3 creature. Or you can evoke it as a secret for 2, and when that mage is attacked, you're going to reveal all of your secrets, and if any of them are traps, in which case it will be evoked for free, so you get a free creature. And then the ambush ability will trigger, which says, again, when I'm evoked as a trap, I become the new target of the attack. So whatever attack was coming into the mage would then be redirected to the Paranoia instead. And if it's a level 1 or 2 creature, you might just get to eat it whole, or at the very least, you've got a sacrificial creature to throw in the way and protect your bonds. Next up, we have Wave Shark, which is actually a water card, but it's a creature doing creaturey things. It's not actually a shark because it's made of water. It's just a water construct in the shape of a shark. It's not really a shark. So we've got rage and water traits here, but it's a level 2. It's got strength 1, so it's going to get level +1, so it costs 2, but it's a level 3 once it's in play. And Voracious Tide says after my mage evokes a spell, if I'm tasked, untask me, otherwise I get a level +1 counter. So you've got some options when you have the Wave Shark out. So a nice play pattern I like to do is this, is of course you evoke it, it's going to come into play tasked, and then hopefully you've got 1 or more follow-up spells. So if you just have 1 follow-up spell, you can evoke it, and that's going to untask the Wave Shark with Voracious Tide, at which point you have a decision. You now have a level 3 untasked creature, so it can attack the same turn that you just played it. So now you're going to be able to attack with this level 3 potentially. And if your 3 is big enough, then by all means go for it. You can just attack with it. Maybe you've got another spell and you can untask it and attack with it again. Of course, keeping in mind that it's level 3 and it's going to be accumulating damage potentially if it's in combat with creatures. But another thing you can do is if you untask it with 1 spell and you've got more spells and maybe level 3 is not big enough, you play a follow-up spell, and and because it is untasked, the first sentence would not apply, and rather the second sentence would give it a level +1 counter, and now it's gone up to 4. And now you can attack with your level 4 creature, unless maybe level 4 wasn't big enough. So if you've got 3 spells, you can play it, Wave Shark, play the first spell to untask it, then play 2 more spells, and now you've got a level 5 creature that can attack. So you definitely want to have a lot of spells when you have the Wave Shark around, but it can do a lot of stuff. And then we're going to round things out with the Sap Evolution Chain. These are definitely creatures doing creaturey things, but also potentially finisher style stuff for a Saff control deck. So starting out with the level 3 Platyrus Strength of the Deep says when I join and after I evolve, look at a number of cards from the top of an opponent's deck equal to 1 plus my Vim. So if you just play this straight up as a basic creature here, it's going 1 plus my Vim is going to be 1 because it's not going to have any Vim. And then it says for each card, choose to have that player discard it or give me a level +1 counter. So you get to look at cards from the top of your opponent's deck and decide whether you want to make them discard it. So these are the only like milling style cards that you're going to see in the set here. Rüniverse decks are pretty small, and the way it works actually is not that you run out of cards and lose, but rather once you run out of cards in your deck, if you need to keep drawing, you have to start drawing directly from your bonds. So in a way, you're breaking your own bonds in order to keep drawing cards when you're forced to do so. So if you can run your opponent out of cards, they might have to start drawing their bonds. If you draw your own last bond during your turn, you get to finish out your turn. So you get a little bit of an advantage there. You do not lose for drawing your last bond, but if you have not killed your opponent during that turn, you will lose at the end of that turn. So it's a little bit of a weird, quirky turn, but I thought it'd be more fun if you have a chance to use your last card rather than if you draw it and then just immediately lose the game. Not quite as fun. So this is a bit of a milling card. You can use this ability when you play the Plathras, and of course, when you evolve it, each time you evolve it, it's going to trigger again because of that when I join or after I evolve trigger there. So you can do this multiple times, and in fact, because of the 1 plus my Vim of part of that sentence, every time you trigger it, it's going to be bigger and bigger because of the evolutions creating Vim. But if you don't want to discard the cards, you want to let your opponent draw those cards, you can just leave them there, and this creature is going to get accumulating level +1 counters, making it bigger and bigger, which is nice as well. So even with just when you play it, you could just look at your opponent's card, put it back, and make this into a level 4, which is nice and ready to evolve. So let's take a look at the second card in the sequence, which is going to be Plesioc, level 6. So the Plathras Plesioc chain here, ending with Plesioc, which we'll see in a second, is a 3/6/9 chain. So unlike some of the other evolution chains, you are going to be paying power for every step along the way, and in fact, you're paying in multiples of 3. So on turn 3, you might play Plathras, and then maybe next turn you pay 3 to evolve, and maybe the turn after that you pay 3 to evolve, or of course you can use assists if you would like to evolve faster than that. But Plesioc has Plathras Evolve, which means you can pay 6 - 3 in order to put it on top of a Plathras that you already have. The Plathras will become the Vim of the Plesioc, meaning if Plesioc would die, it loses its Vim instead. And of course also meaning that Strength of the Deep, when it triggers, because Plesioc will inherit that Strength of the Deep ability, it will now count that it has 1 + 1 Vim, and it will trigger Strength of the Deep for 2, letting you look at 2 of your opponent's cards. And if you put them both back, you're going to have get level 2 level +1 counters, or again, you could be discarding them and making your opponent accelerate toward milling out. And then on top of all that, we're adding ward to the equation, which means it can't be chosen for opposing spells and effects, so it's going to be harder for your opponent to try to take this off the table, which is going to be especially relevant when you evolve it into Plesioc, the level 9. So again, we're paying 9 - 6, total of 3, in order to evolve Plesioc into Plesioc. If you happen to skip the Plathras, if you didn't have that, maybe you just evoked Plesioc for 6, and now you want to evolve it into Plesioc, you can definitely do that. You can skip the middle evolution chain, or you can skip, or you can't skip the middle, you can't do that, but you can skip the first step, or you can just never play the third step, or whatever you want to do there. But so let's say that is what we've got, which means we trigger Strength of the Deep for 1, then we trigger Strength of the Deep for 2, and now we're triggering Strength of the Deep for 3, because again, Plesioc is going to be inheriting that Strength of the Deep ability, as well as Ward. And now we've gained a new ability, Mage Hunter, which definitely cares about how many times we put cards into our opponent's discard pile, especially mage cards. So Mage Hunter says, after I become tasked, on your turn, untask me. This ability triggers no more times each turn than the number of mages in an engaged mage's discard pile. So basically, as long as you are engaged with any of your opponent's mages, it's going to be looking at how many mage cards are in that player's discard pile, and that is how many times the Plesioc is going to get to untask for free. So maybe you put those mages there with the Strength of the Deep triggers, or maybe those mages were put there by your opponent using those mage cards for assists. But either way, the Plesioc is going to be a big attacker that is just going to relentlessly keep coming in and in. So that is definitely a Leviathan type undersea creature doing sea creaturey things, and that rounds out the sea life focus trait for Saff. So thank you very much for watching this video about Saff. I hope you learned a lot about the undersea deeps. Let me know which of the 3 focus traits is your favorite: knowledge, water, or sea life, and or which of the cards I went over today was your favorite one, or you would be interested in building a deck around. Certainly remember that when you build a deck, you can combine pretty freely the facet with either its 2 adjacent facets. So we have looked at both Quam and Thist, the 2 facets adjacent to Saff, so you can freely mix those and build the control deck, or maybe card draw focused drawing deck, or combo deck of your dreams, whatever it may be. Let me know. Stay tuned for the next penultimate installment, which will be Sphene, the yellow-green facet full of bugs. Subscribe so we can get more subscribers, and bye.